All right, so today we're really diving deep into a campaign you don't hear a lot about, Bougainville, 1944. And I gotta say, the sources you found on this, fascinating stuff. We're talking detailed battle accounts, personal stories, even some
Oh, it's a campaign that often gets overshadowed by the bigger island hopping narratives, you know?
right, like it gets lost in the shuffle, but the more we dig into this, the more you realize just how crucial Bougainville was in the grand scheme of the Pacific Theater. So no
Well,
more overlooking it, right? Let's
absolutely. Bougainville was pivotal. And to understand why we need to look beyond just the island itself.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Set the scene for us.
So it's 1944, right? Japan is on the defensive, but they're still fiercely clinging to their strongholds. One of their most vital supply hubs is Rabaul, up in New Britain. And see, Bougainville? Geographically, it was like a choke point, right on those crucial sea lanes that fed right into Rabaul. Control Bougainville, you cut off that lifeline.
A strategically placed roadblock, huh? So more than just an island, it was all about disrupting that flow of supplies and reinforcements to the Japanese further north.
Exactly. And you know from the research, the Allies, they recognized this immediately. Bougainville was perfect for airfields. They saw the potential of that natural harbor at Boone.
Right, right. Our sources mention those as key objectives. Airfields to control the skies, that harbor as a staging ground. It's almost like the island was tailor-made for this kind of campaign.
Almost.
Almost. Okay, now you've got me nervous. What's the catch?
Well, the same things that made Bougainville strategically valuable also made it a nightmare to fight on. Dense jungles, mountains.
The sources weren't kidding when they called it green hell, huh?
Not even a little bit.
Yeah.
This wasn't going to be like those earlier island hopping campaigns where speed and maneuverability were everything.
Yeah.
1944 on Bougainville, this was about a very different kind of warfare. The Allies, once they established that beachhead, they shifted to what we call strategic grinding.
Strategic grinding. So not about those quick, decisive victories, more about, what, attrition, wearing down the Japanese over time.
Exactly. Think constant patrols to harass enemy positions, carefully planned offensives aimed at disrupting those critical supply lines we talked about. It was a war of attrition, fought inch by bloody inch.
And it's in this context, this strategic grinding, that our sources start to highlight the arrival of a very particular unit, the 93rd Infantry Division. This is where things start to get really interesting. Now, the 93rd Infantry Division, this wasn't just another unit, right? Our research really emphasizes what a pivotal moment this was, not just for the Pacific Campaign, but for the U.S. military as a whole.
It was a turning point. The 93rd, you see, they were the first African-American infantry division to be deployed in combat during World War II.
Wow. And I'm guessing, given the time period we're talking about, that wasn't an easy road for those soldiers. Our notes mention segregation within the military.
Absolutely. The racism, the prejudice they faced, even within their own ranks, it was systemic. They were fighting two wars, you could say.
Yeah.
One against the enemy on Bougainville, and one against the deeply ingrained bigotry back home, and even within the military structure itself.
It's almost unimaginable to be facing that kind of danger in a place like Green Hell and to have to deal with that kind of hatred from, your own countrymen.
And yet they persevered. They didn't just endure, they excelled.
You know, when you think about those larger strategic goals we were talking about, wearing down the Japanese, securing Bougainville, it's easy to forget that on the ground it was individuals, people like those soldiers of the 93rd who were carrying that burden. Their story makes this history so much more. Exactly. And, speaking of the human side of this campaign, I was really struck by some of the other stories our listener dug up. We talk about intelligence gathering in the Pacific, and you think, submarines, maybe, code breakers. But the Coast Watchers, that's a whole different level of bravery.
Operating behind enemy lines, often completely cut off. It was a vital and incredibly dangerous role.
Our listener specifically mentions a guy named Paul Mason, an Australian coast watcher who managed to evade capture on Bougainville for, get this, the entire Japanese occupation.
Yeah, Paul Mason's story is incredible. Living off the land, building trust with the local islanders, all the while radioing intel back to the Allied forces.
A one-man intelligence network in the middle of Green Hell.
He was a lifeline for the Allies, providing crucial information on Japanese troop movements, supply lines. You can't overstate the importance of individuals like Paul Mason in a place like Bougainville.
It really highlights how intertwined the war effort was with those local communities, relying on their knowledge, their courage.
Absolutely. The Allies owed a huge debt to those islanders who risked their lives to support them, people like Paul Mason working in the shadows. Though on the other side of things, it wasn't all deadly serious. Our sources also mention some rather unconventional tactics used by the Japanese.
You're talking about washing machine, Charlie, because yeah, our listener included that, and I gotta say, I was a little confused at first.
Washing Machine Charlie wasn't a person, but a plane. Or, well, accounts vary. Could have been a few different ones.
Okay, so what's with the name?
Imagine this. You're an Allied soldier, deep in the jungles of Bougainville, right? Already on edge, and then this Japanese plane starts circling overhead.
I'm already tense just thinking about it. So this plane, it's attacking.
Nope. No bombs, no strafing runs, just noise. This constant droning engine noise, like an old washing machine, apparently. Hence the nickname.
So just psychological warfare then, messing with the soldiers' heads?
Yeah, gotta be unnerving. Like, you're already on edge in green hell, right?
Yeah.
And then you get this buzzing sound all night, can't sleep.
Exactly. Sleep deprivation, that constant tension, it wears you down. Might sound kind of, I don't know, almost funny when you first hear about Washing Machine Charlie, but
Oh, I bet. Like some absurd wartime joke. Yeah, but it gets to the heart of what made Bougainville so different. The psychological strain of this kind of campaign, the way even something as seemingly small as a noisy plane could become part of the war of attrition. And speaking of lasting impacts, Bougainville's story doesn't end with the war, you know. Our sources point to a rather unexpected legacy, that massive copper mine.
right, the Panguna mine. It's quite a leap from jungle warfare to, one of the world's biggest copper mines. How does that even connect?
It's a fascinating link. See, during the campaign, Allied forces, they conducted extensive geological surveys, mapping terrain, searching for Japanese positions. But in doing so, they also charted mineral deposits. And years later, this wartime data, it leads directly to the discovery of huge copper reserves on Bougainville.
Wow. Talk about unintended consequences, huh? So the very act of fighting a war, it sets the stage for this major resource extraction project years down the line. Makes you think about those ripples in history, actions echoing out in ways you might never anticipate.
Exactly. And it brings up a whole host of complex issues, especially given Bougainville's history. Resource exploitation in a region so marked by conflict. That's a lot to unpack.
Definitely gives you pause for thought. So we started this deep dive with your interest in a campaign that doesn't get a lot of attention, right? Of Bougainville, 1944. And what we found is it's this microcosm of the Pacific War, but also something completely unique.
Absolutely. We saw the strategic importance, how Bougainville fit into those larger Allied objectives, but we also got a glimpse of what it was like on the ground. The realities of jungle warfare, the human cost, the stories of resilience like Paul Mason and the 93rd Infantry Division.
And even Washing Machine Charlie, right, reminds us that even in the midst of all that hardship, there's this very human need to find humor, to cope, to make sense of things. It's all part of the story.
It's what makes history so compelling. You dig beneath the surface and you find these incredible stories, these unexpected connections that make the past feel so much more real.
Exactly. So for those listening, if this deep dive piqued your curiosity, don't stop here. Dig into those firsthand accounts, those memoirs from the soldiers who were there in Green Hell. Trust me, it's worth it.